This is Austin Kelly. He's going to be talking about plant ID competition as a tool for cultivating botanical knowledge and passion. So welcome, Austin.
I'm Austin Kelly, and I'm talking about planting the seed and using ID competitions work is that going to have a test of your knowledge. And what you're trying to learn is, what is this plant and why should I know what this plant is? Okay, so generally what we're asking the kids to do, for adults, just whoever's taking the competition, is what is this plant? And so a press specimen like this. So who's worked with a herbarium specimen? You've probably seen some press specimens. It's a great way to store plants for a long period. It's by pressing them and getting all the moisture out, and it preserves them. Some of these can be preserved for hundreds of years. So it's a great way to keep plants usable, and it's a great tool to use these plants for these competitions. And they typically have a set number of time, so often it's going to be about 60 seconds to look at this plant. And they usually have a list beforehand. So they'll have a list from the starting groups. The younger kids start out with about 100 plants. Do you think you could name 100 plants right now? It's a little harder than you think, but as you get older and start getting into more competitions, you can get up to 200 plants. And then some are indefinite amounts of plants if you are doing like a widespread competition across an ecoregion, for example. So you have 60 seconds to look at the plant. You can look closely at its characteristics. You usually are going to want to use a hand lens or a microscope. Well, they don't usually have microscopes, but you can get a hand lens or a magnifying glass and look closely. Like, what do you see? You see this kind of flower. You see these little prickles on the stem. You see this very distinct kind of leaf. Does anybody know what this species is? There you go. Can you spell it? So that's a little harder. Yeah, so this is Solanum eleagnifolium, is what she answered. But this is silverleaf nightshade, for those of you that don't know the Latin term. So that's an important native, for better or worse. And then you have to answer a few characteristics about these plants. So even at a young age, even these third graders will have to know some very important characteristics about these plants, including longevity. Is that annual or perennial? So does it grow and die in 1 year, or is it going to be several years before it goes through its whole life cycle? What is its season of growth? Cool season, warm season, and generally that means, is it a C3 or C4 plant? You learn that much later in your botanical career. What is the origin? So is it native or introduced? That's a very important thing, especially for NPSOT members. That's going to be important to teach the kids. If you're learning the plants, you better know, is it from here or not? And what is its livestock and wildlife value? That's another important thing they have to learn. Yes. Yes, the common name for this species is silverleaf nightshade. And is it poisonous or not for livestock? And sometimes for humans. Some species might be important for kids to go, or much younger kids. If they go out and eat it, are they going to get sick? And what is the species utilization? So that can be, is it a increaser with grazing, a decreaser, or are there other species that utilize this, like insects, deer, quail? So there's all sorts of different competitions that get into all these aspects, and these kids are expected to know all these things about each plant that they have to learn. So that is a lot of information. So now I want you all to get out your pens and pencils. You're going to be taking these contests. So everybody get ready. We're starting off with an easy one, okay? Both. Yes. You're right. Well, this is just for you. You're right. Yeah, this is just to make this a little more interactive. So the question was, I got a question on if I am, sorry, could you repeat it? Oh, yes. Yes, Right. Is the focus of my talk here going to be about training the kids or about testing them? So I'm going to be talking a bit about both. And so kind of giving some best tips about how we can train the kids and just how we should get involved as a society, the native plant society, that is. So starting off with this one, I started off with an easy one. Hopefully you all know it. So you need to know the family name, Fabaceae, the legume family. It's Lupinus texensis. So you might be learning a few new things here. The Texas bluebonnet, and of course, it is our state flower of Texas. It is an annual and it's native. Okay, now a little harder one. The picture is not ideal, but this is often what you'll get sent if you're a natural resource professional. This is the sort of thing you'll get sent from a landowner and say, please tell me what this is. And usually you cannot tell. So you say, okay, I can take a wild guess, or you can take some better pictures. So here's a slightly better picture. And again, I'm sorry, it's very far. So, this isn't the most ideal. Usually you'd get to look real close at the stem. So everybody take your guesses. I'll give you a few seconds to look it over and come up with what you think it is. So this one is going to be our state grass of Texas. So we've got Poaceae, the grass family, Bouteloua curtipendula, Sidotes grama, perennial and native, also known as the state grass. So hopefully several of you might have known that one. Let's get a little harder. How about just a rosette? Now, you might be thinking, like, why would you need to know what this is? Like, there's not even a flower on there. Well, as a real professional in this field, you're going to have to go out in the field and identify these plants after they've been grazed. So you have to teach kids every stage of the plant's growth, not just the flowery stage. You also have to show it as a rosette. So this is an important part of teaching how the plants are going to work. You have to show multiple life stages. Well, here's a little hint. Does that help? We've got Engelmann daisy. So this is the Asteraceae sunflower family. It's Engelmannia peristenea. And it is a perennial and native. The next one, this one's just a leaf. It's another important aspect of how you teach for learning about identifying plants. There are lots of different parts of plants. You're not going to see every piece every single time. You can know it by the bark. You can know it by the berries. You can know it by the leaf, by the root. There's a lot of distinguishable characteristics about every single species. So it's important to teach every single part. So here's the flower. Here's the berries. You may recognize those because they're very bad. So this is in the Meliaceae mahogany family. That's Melia azadarac, the China berry tree. So you might be thinking, this is a native plant talk. Why am I showing you invasive species? Well, if you don't teach the invasives, how are people going to know that they're bad? So this is a really important aspect of teaching anyone about plants, especially in these plant competitions. If you teach them all the same and just say, here's all the plants, learn them, that's not very useful for teaching native versus invasive. You really have to teach what role does it play in the ecosystem and why is it important. And this one's very important because of its introduction and that it's a very serious invader and very bad in riparian zones. Yeah, so the question was, what is this last species often confused with? And that would be Sapindus saponaria or Drummondii, which is the soapberry. So that one has more succulent berries. There's a few different characteristics. The flowers are very different. So it has white, small flowers. These are quite purple. And the leaves are very different. So this is just one major reason why it's so important that we teach plant identification properly, because there are a lot of lookalikes. And the soapberry that you mentioned is extremely important in our landscapes, and it's a great species to have. This one is one of the worst species you can have, and to a layman, they look the same. So you really have to go and teach these characteristics to show, why do we need to know? Why do I need to learn more? There's always more to learn. Okay, we get a little harder. So one reason I'm making it a little harder is actually because of our president, Ricky Lennox. He was one of the first people that gave me my first plant contests. because he's helped with contests for many, many years. So he's been an amazing teacher. But he would always, at the brigades that he would help with, which is a summer camp, he would always start off with a big quiz. You take a quiz at the beginning of the camp, and you take the same quiz at the end of the camp. And that's just to see how much the kids learn over time. So I think that's a really effective thing to do. But he would always, at the beginning of the camp, he would make sure to make the contest so hard that no one would ever get completely right. He would always offer, whoever gets 100% on this test the first time, he will personally buy a Hummer. And no one ever did. He would make that claim, but nobody ever took him up on it. No.
Oh.
Okay, so here is another aspect of this plant in particular that might make it a little easier. So with just this minor thing right here, there are many kids, and I say kids, they're maybe 12 years old in some cases. There are probably several dozen kids across Texas that if they saw that, they would know what it is because they do these contests. How many of you knew what that was with the first one? How many of you know what it is with the second one? So this is yellow Indian grass, Sorghastrum nutans. And this one is actually one of the few distinguishable grasses that you can tell what it is just based on the ligules. And the ligules are just tiny little parts based are on the grass that are where the leaf blade and the leaf sheath connect. So that's very advanced terminology. You learn that in agristology, which is a college level grass identification course. Kids don't need to learn that, but if it's an identifiable characteristic, they should learn it. And so it's one that they can learn with just one little character. They will never get it wrong because it's the only one that has that. So we're going to move on a little bit here. So number 6, we're getting to the next grass, or sorry, not grass, but next plant that you need to ID. I'll give you a few seconds to look it over. I'll give you another hint. We've got the flower now, or the catkin in this case. And now we've got the whole shrub. So some of you may have gotten this one. It's in the legume family. Neltuma glandulosa is the current name. Our honey mesquite. So that's just another one that you would need to know. How's everybody doing so far? Some good, some don't know at all. Some didn't get the bluebonnet in the very first, so, Okay, and a bonus one. So just like Ricky Lennox, I want to make sure no one gets all these right. If you get this one, you're an amazing botanist. It is in Texas, that's all I'll say. Very West Texas. Sedum was my first guess. So someone said that they guessed sedum. I would have thought that at first, but not quite. Who's heard of flame flower? It's in that family, but this one is the Montiaceae family. It's Phemeranthus brevicalis, the dwarf fame flower, so very closely related to our orange flame flower, and it's perennial and native, and it only grows on the tops of our few mountain ranges of Texas. So it's only 3 inches tall. The flower is bigger than the entire rest of the plant. This one is fame flower. So it used to be in the flame flower family, but they realized they're actually 2 families. So they just took the L off and made it a fame flower. So how did everybody do? So some not bad, some very bad. Well, how does it make you feel? Like, how does looking at these plants and trying to identify them, how does that make you feel? So some people were glad that they knew the mesquite. Anybody else? How does anybody else feel? That grasses are hard, so it helps you learn your limitations, right? So hopefully, at least with the first couple, it gives you the thrill of achievement. You realize, oh, I know something. I know this. I can write it down real quickly. So it makes you feel like you're smart. Like that's a good feeling, right? And then other ones, you do not feel smart. It may even make you feel very dumb, like, oh, I don't know what this is. But that's not a negative emotion, especially when you're teaching kids. That's not going to be a negative. They see it as a negative, like, oh, I got it wrong. Like, that's terrible. But if you transform the argument a little bit and say, well, that's just something you can get better on. That's just something you can perfect. So we want to drive to mastery. Like, we want to make sure that they make it a learning experience, not a negative experience. And then it can also be a catalyst for connection. It makes you want to share with other people. Like, oh, did I do bad? Did I do good? Well, it doesn't matter. I'd like to talk about it with my friends, especially if you've got a team that you're working with and you're all learning together. It's really important that you can share with each other and grow from that experience. And then it also inspires a spark of wonder where you can actually make connections on these competitions. So if you're a kid in the contest, or even some of you today, I don't know if my talk is that memorable, but just thinking about it and realizing, oh, I knew this, I didn't know this, it can be a long-term memory for some kids. So that's another important aspect to be thinking about. So we want to discover the unique characteristics of native plants through these contests. So what I'm wanting to talk about here is just why these contests are so important and why we need to be promoting them throughout Texas. So they can really foster a deep appreciation for all our native plants. We need to be teaching our native plants, and I think this is one of the best ways to do it. And it engages them with their local flora. It starts to introduce them to ecology. It's just a great way to get kids involved in nature, where we're doing that less and less as a society. Yes. Can adults do this? So the question is there an adult contest? And I think I'll address that toward the end. So basically, I would like to introduce, who am I? Why do I care about any of this? So I am a botanist, a professional botanist. I work all over the country. Just came back from New Mexico to do endangered species surveys. We found 3 new endangered species populations that only grow in this one national forest. Just really cool work. And so been in 12 different states and worked in 3 different countries. And I have over 150,000 acres that my projects have covered across the U.S., looking for endangered or invasive species and mapping them and helping with their conservation. I've also trained the state and national teams for the Texas A&M collegiate plant identification team for the last 4.5, 5 years. So I have had a collegiate team. And before that, I was actually in some of these competitions. So this all started with a little 14-year-old me. I had just moved to a new town, Breckenridge, Texas. And so I went to a 4-H competition, or not a competition, I went to a 4-H club. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. I just moved there to a new town, didn't know anything about it. It's pretty rural. And so I went to the 4-H club. I knew 4-H was showing animals and livestock shows. You know, that's what most people know as 4-H and FFA. But when I went to the club, I saw one little sign-up sheet with no names on it that said Grass ID Competition. I had no idea what that meant. I just saw an opportunity, I guess. So I signed my name and decided, well, I'll go show up for a practice and see what it's about. So I went and started learning about grasses and plants, and they started teaching us different things, and I realized, oh, these plants are kind of cool. It's something I can learn, and I got better at it over time and realized, oh, this isn't just kind of interesting, it's really important. These ecosystems and these plants are extremely important for the well-being of our whole world. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my current team. So I have led several teams at the Texas A&M University. And for those of you that don't know, there is a collegiate level of plant ID competitions. This extends beyond just 4-H and FFA, high school and middle school. So it even goes into the college level. So, as a coach, just to give a little backstory, this little team right here is quite near and dear to me. So, I've helped with quite a few camps, like summer camps, youth summer camps, the Texas Brigades and the Youth Range Workshop, and they are summer camps focused on natural resource and plants and things like that, wildlife, and there was a small group that we had from Eagle Pass that had never done any sort of plant stuff, no range, no wildlife, anything like that. And they had a group that came to this camp that I was assisting coach. Oops. Or sorry, not coach, but I was leading this camp and teaching about the plants there. And we had about 4 or 5 students from this Eagle Pass area, didn't know a single thing, but they got so interested in these plants. We just started showing them, pulling them up and saying, "Oh, this is this and this is this." And they just started to love it. So they started asking a lot of questions like, "Well, how can we get better at this? What should we do?" So I started giving them some supplies as a school. They were in high school, they were freshmen in high school. And so they were sending me emails like, "Hey, how can we get our team better?" So I gave them some specimens. I gave them herbarium specimens, and they started learning and teaching themselves basically, and just what they could find online. And in 1 year, they won the state championship in FFA. So they really put a lot of effort into it. And then it turned out 3 or 4 of them came from Eagle Pass High School, and they joined the Texas A&M team, which happened to be my team. So they came and joined me at A&M, which was a really cool experience. So that team has done exceptionally well as they have as this last year, they got first and second place teams because we had enough for 2 teams. So we got first and second place in all of Texas. And then we were the second place team in the USA, just behind Utah State. And then we were the 5th place international team for an international competition across North America, including, I think, 6 teams from Mexico and 12 schools from Canada. So it was a really big competition, and they did extremely well. Mexico has been winning the international. Sorry, he asked who won the plant ID competition for the international one, and at the international competition, Mexico has been winning for the last 18 years, I believe. I don't know what they're doing down there, but yeah. Yeah, they do have a lot of great botanists down in Mexico that are teaching some of these teams. So, and they've had a very long established coaches. Like I said, I'd only been there a few years, so I can't. I got to keep working. So I want to introduce a little bit of the history behind these contests. So as most of you have probably heard of FFA and 4-H, they're pretty well known clubs, and FFA is exclusive to high school. It's tied to schools themselves. So you're required to be in a public school to be an FFA chapter. But for 4-H, that's going to be open to any a student in that age range. So I think it starts at like 12, 13 up until you graduate high school. So it can include a lot of homeschool students as well. So that's where they get to go do these contests too. I have a question. But maybe not everybody knows what it is. Right. So FFA, the question, or you made a good point that FFA used to be known as the Future Farmers of America Association. Technically, it is not any longer. They changed their name, I think, in the 80s just to be the National FFA Organization. And the reason was because they knew 90% of these kids were not going to be farmers. You know, if the only people that become farmers are farmers' children, or that's kind of it these days. You know, people don't become farmers anymore. So they did change the name, but with the roots of being, we need to teach agricultural related themes, and plant ID happened to be, or plants in general are a very important part of that. So crops is where it started. Crops and livestock were kind of where it got its start. And this was way back a long time ago. So this is looking back into 1919, the Texas 4-H starts hosting plant ID competitions. Before that, it actually started as the Corn Club. So it was a bunch of farmers that grew corn and they wanted their kids to learn to grow corn. So they sent them into a group and had the Corn Club. After that, they started they started expanding a bit more to be more comprehensive of all agricultural activities. So in 1919, they actually started plant ID competitions for 4-H in Texas. 1951, they didn't start hosting range competitions until the 1950s. So this is kind of an important shift here because the 1919 era, the Dust Bowl was not too late after that. And that's when rangeland management and crop management really became much more important because it was starting to have erosional problems and just affecting all of society with bad management of these lands. So they realized, we really need to be teaching the youth that there's better ways to do this. There's more we can be teaching, and that included these range competitions. This also happened to be about the same time that the Society for Range Management came into play. So they realized, we shouldn't just graze everything down to the ground. We need to actually make it better. We need to not overgraze it. We need to figure out how can we keep these landscapes at a sustainable level. And the only way they could do that is by learning the plants. If you don't know the plants, you can't read the landscape effectively. So in 1958, the Society for Range Management hosted its first collegiate plant competition. So they realized, what about all these students going into rangeland and wildlife and just botanical sciences? They are still going into college for these things, but they wanted to keep the competition aspect going. So that started up in about 1958. So now we have the current landscape of plant ID competitions in Texas. So we've got 4-H and FFA contests. So there's actually a lot of contests. It's not just plant ID. That's kind of the focus of mine, but there's a lot of different competitions that incorporate at least a little bit of plant identification aspect. So for 4-H, we have several. We have the plant identification. That's basically what you did earlier. You just look at the plant and try to guess what it is, and then you may have some characteristics you also need to know about it. And then there's also a range evaluation, which that is like a half competition is plant identification, and then the other half is learning or deciding, is this land being managed correctly? Like, is it being overgrazed? And we make simulations to say, like we may cut the grass and really short, and they have to determine, was this overgrazed or is it at a good sustainable level? They have to kind of determine that. And then range and pasture grass ID. So grass ID is slightly separate from the plant ID. This one started off as a range society contest. So that's why there was such a grass focus. And even today, just from tradition more than anything, our district and state contests for 4-H are grass only. So you do have to know, I believe, 80 different grass species just to do well in this competition. That's a lot of grasses. So the FFA contests are similar. There's even a few more additional ones. So there's the plant identification, the range evaluation, and then there's two more that 4-H does not have. So FFA has wildlife competition. This is one that Ricky Lennox has helped with for many, many years. And this one is one of my favorite competitions, both to host and to compete in. This one had several different categories. So it has a small plant ID category where you have to do the plants. And this one may be completely out in the field where you have to look at a tree or a grass or a little sprout and say, what is this plant? And then you have to determine which species actually utilize it. They go down to squirrel, quail, dove, deer, of course, turkey, and they have to know all those, and every plant that is on the list, they have to know what species like that plant in particular. So it's very involved. And then they also have a few other things that they do at the wildlife one. They have a animal identification section. They have a laws and regulations section, which is just a quiz on wildlife laws. and they have a habitat evaluation. And that one is really interesting, where they'll actually get a plot of 10 by 10 meter of a land and say, what animals can this plot support theoretically? So it's a very interesting contest. And then environmental natural resources is a different contest that also has a plant ID portion, but it has a soils component. It has a GPS component. They have to learn how to use a handheld GPS and effectively. So that one is just really comprehensive of what a field biologist would do. So that one is a really interesting contest as well. And then the collegiate contests are the last section. There are several different competitions in Texas that host collegiate contests. So we have the Society for Range Management, the Texas section hosts one competition. The Wildlife Society hosts a different competition. And the newest one, which I have started last year at the Texas Society for Ecological Restoration. So we have 3 major collegiate contests in the state of Texas. So our next one will be in November this year. So it should be pretty exciting. Yes. So she asked if the one in November is in San Antonio. This year, the Society for Ecological Restoration is in San Antonio at Trinity University, and we've got a couple teams already signed up for that, and hopefully we can get all the teams tied in and have another good contest. We don't have so it's usually not public. So I'll back up a little bit and say that there are many different ways that these contests are held. So some of them are strictly botanical specimens, or sorry, herbarium specimens only. So they're all pressed material, and that can be done anywhere. That can be done in a classroom because all you need is a stack of pressed material. And these contests can range anywhere from 20 plants to we have some contests that have over 100 plants at this one contest. So they have to sit for at least 100 minutes to go through all these plants. But to answer your question on if it's publicly available, it's open to the members that are at the meeting, but it's not viewed online or anything like that. So usually it's pretty competitive. So we actually try to keep everything silent so everybody gets a set number of seconds to look at each plant and then has to rotate. So some of these are for the national or the international meeting, for example, has actually some pretty high stakes. They can get some good scholarships for winning some of these competitions. I may add, I went to China on a study abroad scholarship because I won a plant competition in high school and it gave me $5,000. So there's some high stakes for some of these competitions. Your odds of getting a scholarship from Plant ID are much higher than a football scholarship. I'll say that. So yeah, and there's much less competition too. So there's over 100 competitions annually across Texas through high school, middle school, and collegiate. So youth summer camps are another great source of plant competitions. So I like to emphasize to any students I get in front of, like, your education does not have to end because the semester ended. So these competitions are not exclusive to school. There are many summer camps. There are several organizations that host summer camps that are very relevant to native plants, plant identification, things like that. So one of the main ones that I like to emphasize is the Texas Society for Range Management. That's what that TSSRM stands for at the top there. But this is the Youth Range Workshop. Last year, we just had our 70th year that this camp has been going on. So it's been at the Junction, Texas, the Texas Tech University Center. It's been there for 70 years. So that is a very long running camp, and it has been focused on its same mission since then, since 1955. So this is a really focused on holistic range management, but we have a very strong emphasis on plant ID, and they have competitions daily at that conference. Yes. I got a question. Do students pay fees to go to these camps? Yes, there are fees associated with all these camps. When I was director of the Youth Range Workshop, which was a few years ago now, I think over 90% of our students were sponsored. And those sponsors are just all sorts of different clubs will sponsor these kids. The Farm Bureau, the Soil and Water Conservation Districts will sponsor them. We've had co-ops sponsor them, like electric co-ops or water co-ops. Almost all the kids have sponsors, and then some of them will just pay their own way if they want to. But we have ample sponsors for it, and that's true for all of them. They all have a fee associated with it because it is expensive to run these camps. Having dealt on the managerial side of it, it's very difficult to sustain. We'll be getting to that point very soon. So another camp I like to emphasize is the Wildlife Conservation Camp. This one is put on by the Texas chapter of the Wildlife Society. So this is another great camp. This one's a broad wildlife focus. So they focus on all sorts of species, and it is not based on hunting. It is based on just true wildlife management, habitat management. This last year, they went to the Davis Mountains, which is a really cool one. This one moves locations every year. So that's a really good one. But they do have a plant portion as well. They have to press plants and name them and find out what good they are for the wildlife, good or bad, because some plants are bad. And the last one I'd like to talk about is the Texas Brigades. And this is one, again, I think I mentioned Ricky Lennox has helped put on. He was one of the first ones that he was on the board that originally founded this one. It started as the Bobwhite Quail Brigade up in North Texas with Dale Rollins. If any of you have met him, he's very influential in this. But this one has 11 different, and that's actually a little old. We have 12 camps. We've actually got a few out of state now. There's one in South Dakota, I believe, that we've partnered with and sent our camp basically to another state for them to implement. And then we have one in South Carolina, I believe. So we're very much spreading with this group. But this one is a very species-specific focus. So sorry, it's a little hard to see them all just because there's so many. But there's a quail brigade, there's a bass brigade, ranch brigade, buckskin brigade, waterfowl brigade, and a coastal brigade. And these are all focused on whichever species that camp is about. But every one of them, maybe not so much the bass and the coastal as much, but all the others have a very heavy plant focus because what do these animals eat? Where do they live? If you can't manage wildlife without managing plants. And so knowing what the plants are is the first step. So they all have a focus on that. One thing I like to question on this map though is where's the botany brigade? So maybe in the next few years we will get a start on that, and maybe that's something NPSOT may want to partner with for. So we'll see about that. Okay, so now I want to tie ecological competition to human competition. So ecological competition, sorry, it's a bit wordy, but the competition in plant ecology can benefit multiple species in some situations. So sometimes you can share nutrients and hinder erosion, and you can support other species while being in competition with each other. Everybody assumes competition is always bad, but there's a lot of situations like where is the most diversity? Well, it's when you improve diversity that you get more diversity. So it's a positive feedback loop. So the more competition you have, the better everything becomes. So moving on to how that ties to our plant competitions. So we've got our student competition and plant ecological competition, and I'd like to do just a quick comparison. So on student competitions, students can strive for knowledge and recognition of plants. And for plant competition, the plants can grow larger to try to compete for light. So in a similar way, they're both growing to become stronger at whatever they're doing. Student competition fosters personal growth. It can foster diversity and learning for the children. And then competitive ecological competition makes environment shapes the plant's diversity. So it improves the diversity that way. And then student competition will engage challenges and build future critically thinking botanists. And realistically, these are not going to be botanists. You know, a few of them may turn out like me and want to be a botanist, but that's going to be a rare occurrence. But it makes them a well-knowing citizen. You know, it makes them know that these things are important, even if they're just going to go be a voting member of society, for example. So it's important that the general public knows what plants are, why are they important? And then that compares to an ecological competition. Healthier ecosystems support thriving flora and diversity. So either competition you're looking at, diversity and growing is going to be the key. And then another situation, the competition in plant ecology mirrors growth and adaptation in education. So if you pin students against each other, if you just take one smart kid, for example, and he has nothing to strive to or no one to compete against, he's going to be dwindled a little bit. He's not going to have anything to aspire for. But if you put students against each other, and students just love to bicker and fight, especially if they're competing for something and if they're on a similar level, they love to try to outbeat each other, right? So it's similar in the plant world. When they're competing and going for those nutrients, it's going to make them both better to try to outgrow each other, and it makes them both better in turn. So we've got some individual learning benefits for having them in these plant competitions. So it helps build their active recall and application. So it's actually going to help them not just learn plants, but it helps them in life. So there's a lot of life skills they can learn by being in these competitions. So it's going to build their stronger memories. It's going to help them work under pressure. There's a lot of motivation through gamification. So actually using these gaming techniques, like these challenge contest techniques, helps them be goal oriented and helps them realize, okay, I got to get better because this competition's coming up. It helps them set personal deadlines on active learning. And then it also builds confidence through mastery. So the better they get, they're going to be more confident in their abilities, and that's going to make them build self-esteem as well. So there's a lot of sideline benefits for them to be in these competitions. And then there's a lot of team learning benefits as well. They've got, if you have a whole team rather than an individual, it's going to be shared knowledge. You can actually accelerate their learning because they're going to be teaching each other things. Even if you teach them a little, they can start sharing and discussing between themselves, and that's going to help with active learning. And then it also helps with accountability and time management, because that makes them realize, okay, I got to get with the team. I got to do this. Makes them accountable. They want to impress their friends. So it's going to make them want to learn more. And then it's also going to be collaborative with skill building. So it helps them want to not branch out a little bit. Like they may not just do this plant ID competition. If they get into this competition, they may want to start doing the wildlife competition, and then they're going to want to do other things. So it just keeps growing and growing the more you put into it. So how can we actually get involved as our native plant society or just as individuals? How can we volunteer, sponsor, partner, and create new opportunities to get kids engaged? Because I don't know if you've looked around this conference, but we've got an older group here. And so we want to get kids more active in this sort of thing. So we can lend our expertise. If you know some of your native plants, if you want to go start learning this list, you can be a teacher for these kids. You can offer your time and services to go teach a 4-H or FFA team. If you go talk to any county extension agent or FFA ag teacher, they're going to love having you as an expert to come teach for them. So share your expertise. You can also serve as an expert judge, like go find these competitions and help out with them and do what you can there. You can also be a connector and connect coaches to landowners or some other resources or financial resources to help get the team to these competitions. So just connecting can also be a useful skill here. Empowering your chapter is going to be another aspect of how can our chapters of the Native Plant Society actually help out with this? Well, they can have training workshops. So if you can get a few plant experts and then you go teach the coaches how to teach these competitions, that's going to be extremely helpful in having a snowball effect of how you can get out this important skill set. And then you can team up with established groups. If there are camps or teams in your area, support them. You can support them with your time or financially, and you can sponsor awards. There's a lot of these competitions all over the state going on all the time. And so if you can sponsor an award, if your Native Plant Society wants to sponsor an award for these competitions, that helps incentivize these students to do well. And then we can also pioneer the future and make some big ideas. So how can we actually, these are just some ideas that I've come up with, but there's a lot more ideas we could be considering. So what can we do as a society, the Native Plant Society, to actually grow and help bring these kids into this field? So like I said, the Botany Brigade, maybe we should make a botany-focused summer camp. We can make new NPSOT contests. We could have our own contests, even at this conference, for instance. And it could be for adults if we wanted to have a little bit of personal competition. And then your big idea here. So if you have something that you think would be a good idea, let's plan it. Let's figure it out and let's make some change. So that's going to be the end of my talk. So thank you for listening, and let's keep teaching for the future. Thank you. So are there any questions? Yes. Yes. So so the question was, is iNaturalist part of this tool set that we use for teaching? I personally do not use it for teaching. I use it for learning myself. I use it all the time. And I think once you're at a more advanced level, it's a great tool to distinguish like individual plant species. One hesitation I would have to using iNaturalist for these youth competitions is that they have a set list of plants that they have to learn. And most of the plants that they're going to go out and find may be similar to the ones on their list, but it may not be the exact one. So they may be seeing like, oh, well, it said it was this plant, but I thought it was this one. So you don't want them to be like finding conflicting sources of information. So iNaturalist can be a useful tool, but in this situation, I think if you have this structured unit of teaching them through plant ID competitions, that's probably it's like learning music by just going and trying it versus learning the steps beforehand, learning the notes. So I would recommend not introducing it until they're a bit further in. But great question. Thank you. Yeah.
Whether it's for adults or children in our local areas, are there resources that we can use, or do we generate our own material?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the question was, for if we wanted to host a plant competition like this, are there resources out there, or would we need to make it ourselves? Usually, these are made on the fly. So most of these competitions are out in a field, and you just go see what the organizers will just go out in the field and go pick things and just say, okay, here, this one's on the list, this one's on the list, this one's 1, 2, 3, 4, and they're all just wild things growing on these landscapes. So that's one really cool aspect of this. But regarding the resources, there's really not a whole lot of resources regarding this. But I think there should be. And maybe that's somewhere that NPSOT could actually come in and help with that. I'd be happy to help design something like that. But I think that is something we're lacking a little bit as far as how would we do it. FFA and 4-H does have like established contests going on all the time. So I would recommend going and helping with some of those, learning how it happens, learning from those people, and then you could just take what you learned there and replicate it yourself would be my recommendation. Thank you. Yeah.
Is more rural-based than city-based? Because I haven't heard of this.
Right. Yeah. I assume most people have never heard of this. So sorry, the question was, is this more rural based or is this widespread? And I would say it's kind of a mix. So we have some rural teams that do very well, like Breckenridge, for example, is a very small rural town, and we had a very flourishing plant ID team. However, there are many city 4-H groups that also have teams that do this. So Bryan College Station has a very good one. Houston has several competitive teams. So lots of FFA programs do this. 4-H is going to be a little less so in those city situations, I would imagine, just because this it's harder to get students involved outside of school. When it's FFA based, it's actually built into the school so they can do it as part of class. So it's a little more structured. But thank you for the question. Yes.
You got a one. She had set list of plants. She wanted to create a garden where all those plants were, so the kids could see them grow, see the different stages, some things like that. And I spent some time collecting material for her to do that. Unfortunately, something happened and she left the school, and you know, he never materialized. But I thought that was an interesting approach. And if an area after school, it's kind of an open area where the kids could go see plants in there.
Yeah, so kind of to repeat what she said for the online audience. So the question was, or the comment was that that there are some teachers that want to actually build a living garden, so to speak, with all these plant specimens, and that is a great approach, I think. And there's actually several of the top plant teams across the state do have a bit of a like a botanical garden, so to speak, of all their specimens of the plants on the list. And I think that's a very useful tool to see the things live in person. However, these plant lists are statewide. So some of the plants will only grow in the Trans-Pecos or only on the coast. So you can't grow all of them everywhere. And there's nowhere you could grow all of them. But where you can grow them, it's great to grow the ones you can. And the ones you can't, you can get botanical specimens for. And then online, of course, there's endless resources to find pictures of these things. And pictures can be useful, but having a real specimen, even a press specimen, is going to be a bit better, I think. But yeah, I think where you can, so similar to our native plant gardens that we do with NPSOT across the state, that would be a great tool for some of these teams. So having these gardens available for those teams is just another great aspect for both the team and for our gardens. So it's kind of a win-win. Are there any other questions? Yes.
Information about the students who participate in this, what their outcomes are, they kind of work in this area or plans themselves.
Yeah, so the question was, what are the outcomes of these students? Like, do they all go into this field? Do they, what are they doing with themselves, basically? So I have a couple perspectives on that. Firstly, the ones that go into high school and middle school and do these competitions, I would say the majority, a broad majority, do not go into the natural resource field, just because there's just not enough openings in that field. Most of them are pretty practical and don't want to. It's a bit of a limited field, but they may have other passions as well. Like this may just be kind of their hobby, but they want to go be a chemist or a doctor or something like that. And same with our camps, our summer camps. We do have a few select ones that I see every year. Students I had 10 years ago that are becoming, great professional botanists or natural resource managers and doing great work on the land. But that is a rarity. I would say most just go live a completely random life, so to speak. You don't know what they're going to do, but you instilled a little bit of knowledge about these plants, and you planted this seed to say, well, these plants are important. Even if you don't ever do another thing with a plant, at least you'll think about them once in a while. So even if that's the only impact, that I think it's an important one. Anybody else? Yes.
These programs are about the only education you can get on botany nowadays and identifying plants. Colleges don't teach botany anymore.
Yes, so we had a comment that said this may be some of the only botanical information education getting out there. Most colleges are not teaching botany anymore, and I would say that is definitely the case. So I started, well, through my undergrad, even we didn't have botany classes. There's only one program in the US that I know of. Well, no, there's a few. There's less than half a dozen programs in the US that teach botany at all. So botany is just not required or not essential to most colleges anymore. And however, there's a lot of fields that are still very open that just don't call themselves botany. So I got a range management background, and while most of what they were teaching was about ranching necessarily, I do not do much with livestock, and I don't really want to. That's just not what I would like to do. I went a fully botanical route, and but my background is with the ranching department, and but so that's where a lot of these plant ID competitions kind of run through, is either ranching or wildlife, something like that. But you are right, there's just very little botany going on anymore, and it's a dwindling focus, I'd say, at colleges and just as a whole. Just our whole botany, most of our botanists are dwindling. So I think we've just hit the time. So thank you very much. If you have any further questions, I'd be happy to answer them later.